This was my favourite interview, partly because Daryl is such a very dear friend, partly because he's such a fascinating person. Today's interview is with Daryl Noonan. Daryl is a co-founder of Wolf Academy, he is a breathwork facilitator, and he is all about living a life with ritual. I'm very grateful for the fact that I have a good friendship with him and that he allows me my kind of scientific lens and allows me to kind of pull and tease out exactly what he's doing and why he's doing it. You will see that in this interview that, especially at the start, I really kind of like lay out the map of what I want from this interview. But then it goes to just amazing places and is my favorite interview. So with that, I am delighted to introduce you to Daryl Noonan.
Hello, Daryl.
What's happening now?
I am pretty good. I am so excited for this call. I've been looking forward to this. I've held onto this one for a wee while. Even though I'd consider you one of my very close friends, I didn't want to do this one straight off the bat. I wanted to kind of feel my feet in the whole interview space before I approached you. So by means of introduction, the people watching this will have heard a little bit of an introduction about you, but to actually introduce yourself, I want to ask, because I'm going to talk a lot about ritual and ceremony today and exactly where we're channeling spirits from. I want to ask, what rituals or what preparation did you do just before this interview?
Oh, wow, the rain is after just absolutely opening up there. Sorry, I was distracted. So before this interview, like I've been saying to you earlier, today was quite up and down emotionally, for many different reasons. And yeah, before going into this call, then I was like, okay, I need to ground myself and come into this clear-headed and grounded. So for whatever reason it was today, I went for cacao. Cacao that I have here is actually from Peru, from a place that I actually stayed, grown by a man who owns the place that I stayed. So I would feel I have I have a connection with that cacao and the place it's from. So yeah, the reason the rain is after shocking me is because an hour ago I was sitting outside basking in the sun with the cacao. And today, something I have really begun to do is instead of making a full-on plan for what I'm going to do is have the rough outline. So I knew I was going to make cacao and I knew I was going to sit outside. After that, then it's just whatever comes, whatever I end up doing. I feel like that it opens up a lot of doorways to not have a rigid plan. So I've sat outside and I ended up just sitting there for quite a while. Just sitting there, allowing all the things that were going on throughout the day they were just coming in waves, kind of like nearly like an attack, nearly like an attack. But the fact that I was sitting there and not trying to do anything else in that moment, I was able to sit with it. Throughout the day, I was doing other things. And when that attack is happening, it's very jarring. But the fact that I was taking this time to sit down and just allow them to come in, and I was like, okay, I can let go of that. That's not a big deal. Okay, I can let that person know I can't do that. So that's not a big deal. And it just straight away began to calm down. Drank the cacao. And for me, I turned on this little water fountain that's outside. And in that stillness, after drinking the cacao, I really felt I could feel the vibration of that water in my body. The sun was shining and I could feel the way that was entering my body. And the moment I said, I'm going to let some of this go now, just a huge gust of wind came. A huge gust of wind. And the wind is something I connected with very deeply in terms of cleansing and feeling how that works in my body. So working with the elements in that way, I find extremely powerful. And I suppose whether or not I was feeling the vibration of that water. Whether or not I felt that the wind was going through my body, because I usually feel like it goes through my actual body. Like whether or not I don't need the scientific explanation to whether that is what I'm feeling. But once I know I believe it, it helps me. And I think that's what my kind of theory on these things is now, on ritual, on ceremony, on working with things like cacao, or like here I have hawthorn, which would be what I consider the Irish heart medicine, the Irish version of cacao maybe. And whether or not, I don't feel I need to know exactly how these things are working, but I do feel that they do, like the elements, the medicines. And learning how they work for me, through me, rather than for example, Googling what the vibration of water does, because I get someone else's opinion. I like to learn through myself, through feeling, through myself. And that's what I did. I did a little bit of breath work after I drank the cacao. Very short, easy, gentle, focusing on the breath, few breath holds. That's something that I work with people in the setting of breath work. And for a long time now, I've had a daily breathwork practice myself, and which is short. It's short and gentle, but I feel I've developed a very close relationship with my breath. And what I mean by that is, it centers me straight away. It gives me space to think without being too attached to what's going on. I've got to a point with my breath that if I have a question that I need to ask myself, I can go into a 5 to 10 minute breath work and ask myself that question. And it's more often than not, I will get an answer or a realization. It's pretty amazing to have that tool there, or that, no, not tool, to have that friend even. Nearly, it's like a friend, a very close friend that I can ask questions and they'll give me the answers. It's myself. It's another part of myself, a deeper part of myself, maybe. A deeper part of my subconscious, I feel. And I won't get right into it now, but I actually had a moment where I actually had a conversation with that part of myself. And it was quite an hilarious interaction. I might get into it later on, but so. And that comes from the fact that I was so consistent every single day to do that short breathwork practice, that I developed this really close relationship with that part. And I think it's, like I would say in the workshops I do with students and stuff, it's not about spending so much time doing all these different modalities or practices that benefit our lives, but just having small, consistent practices that really, really make a difference. And that's what I've found with things like the breath and the hawthorn tea here that I'm drinking. Something I would drink 99% of the evenings would be that. And it's very subtle in how it works, very gentle, but it was consistency over time. Where I could get messages, get lessons through myself from the spirit of the hawthorn. And again, I think all these things come back to it's how they work through our bodies. That's how I'll keep this to I. That's how I have utilized and learned from different practices and trying different ones and seeing what ones resonate and what don't. And because we have access to it all, it's a little bit overwhelming at times. We have access to so many different modalities and we're seeing everything on social media. It's like, okay, I'd love to try that because that's after working really well for that person. And it's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. It can be a little overwhelming, and it can have what I've seen kind of negative effects at times when I have tried too many things in a very short period of time. That's just, yeah, like it goes back to when I was heavily in abusing myself with different distractions, alcohol, different things. And it was just more all the time. So that can easily transfer into what seems healthy, but too much of anything obviously usually has a more negative effect. So yeah, I've gone on a bit there, but
no, you have it perfect. I have so many strands I want to try and touch on here. I won't get to all of them. I know that for a fact. So I'm going to jump. Yeah, I know. I'm going to jump well past. There's a few things there I'd like to explain for people who are kind of new or who are kind of tender on this type of language. But I think you explained it nicely there, where it's whether you're by giving the power to it, it gives you a power to reflect on it. I think you've explained that quite beautifully. We could do a full talk on that one, but I'm going to leave that one. And I'm going to ask instead, so something that struck me or is causing tension with me, I suppose, is the idea of what spirits were channeling, what spirits were addressing what. So again, I'm using the term spirits here as like a projection. So different ways of relating to different parts of life. Like, what spirit do I go into work with? What spirit do I go into family with? What version of myself do I go into these places at? If I was to personify work, what spirit would it be? What spirit of mine is meeting that spirit? Like, that's kind of how I'm using it here. So what I want to put to you, so I'm going to give you my understanding here in my language. I know you've studied under shamanism and you've done quite a lot of that. So I'm going to place it into that language, and I want you to try and see if it gels correctly. So my tension here, or what I'm trying to work at personally myself, is the differences between the spirit within. What versions of myself am I talking to? How am I working with myself? All of that sort of stuff. Then there is the spirit between, as in between people, where there's the relationship and they call me on my BS and they bring out maybe worse sides in me, they bring out better sides in me, but it's something different. It's a different way of playing with the spirits. And then the spirit beyond, which is kind of what you're tapping into there, where when you're on about this, you're like so humble in the fact that you're saying you're trying to get like a first person experience of these things, and you're kind of humbly coming to it because you're recognizing that we don't have the full grasp of it. Mm-hmm. So the spirit of the cacao works for me this way. And I understand it has a heritage here, but I'm still willing to actually look at my first person perspective and not just say like, it's only in this situation. It's only for this type of ceremony or this type of situation. And you have that humility and autonomy without getting lost. I don't know, it's a humble way. That one's difficult. And that one is difficult. This is kind of why I'm bringing it to you, because I find you some bit of a specialist, or like I identify you with that, the spirit beyond. When I was talking to Wayne the last day and we brought up nature, you were the first person that came to mind, as in to get out into nature and be held by a space. Because I know you do that, like that's quite strong in your practice. So this idea of a spirit within, talking to myself, my inner demons, my inner angels, whatever, the spirit between, this emergent communication, like this conversation I couldn't have without you, and then the spirit beyond. Does that map onto, roughly speaking, your underworld, your middle world, and your upper world? In the fact that your underworld is within, is your demons, is these passions, is these desires. Your middle world is this communication space, this community, this family, all the things that can get very messy. And then this upper world where it's beyond us, it's bigger than, it is something like that? And if so, like, do you use that map when you're creating your ritual? So when the middle world is getting very chaotic, do you return into the lower world to find peace? And do you tap into the upper world?
Mm.
And if so, can I translate that into my language of the spirit within and the spirit beyond? And then in this, like, to get ready for this interview, which is a spirit between, it's that emergent property.
I totally understand what you're saying, and that's yeah, you can translate that into your language. I didn't necessarily think of yeah, the lower world being the inner, the middle world being what we're doing here maybe, and then the upper world going beyond. I didn't think of it in that way, but yeah, that's a way to understand it, I suppose. It's a way to, yeah, I find that yeah, to understand these kind of concepts, it is extremely beneficial to have a way like that to kind of categorize maybe.
Yeah. Why is it beneficial? So that is my follow-up question. What does achieving the balance between them, what does it achieve? Because I think the promise of enlightenment has caused me issues. The promise of a landing space of, like, this, like, I'm just solid as a rock, stoic as anything, I am, and I have it already, and I just need to figure it out, or like that whole pressure and space, because I think you can only get it by not chasing it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But is a better way of approaching this type of ritual, of approaching ceremony in life, of this way of kind of navigating ourselves, is it simply a better map? As in, whether it's true or not, whether it is like scientifically proven or not, is it a better map that when I feel stressed, I need to tap into the lower world, I need to tap into myself. When I feel lost and anxious, I need to tap into the upper world, into this thing beyond me, so I can humble myself. And it's simply by categorizing, as you said, that we have a better map? Or is there a kind of what do you think the balance achieves? Like, when you were preparing for this interview and you said you wanted to come into here in like a level headspace, like, why? What is that good for?
Okay. Yeah. What I think for many people, having a way to map it out is extremely beneficial, because of the way our minds are. And I at times have had, what would you call? Yeah, sometimes the whole categorizing, boxing off and all that kind of thing, I used to find it a bit too logical for me, maybe. But at the same time, I would do it to a certain extent. And I think when you are feeling out of balance or anxious or whatever it is, having something that you can do to, like you're saying, what did it do for me before coming in here? When I'm in a grounded space, when I'm not feeding into my I'd say emotions, but it's not that I'm not feeling emotion here. It's when I'm grounded, I can be authentic, and that's, I think, the main thing for me is, I notice when I'm out of balance, if I'm stressed, if I'm anxious, it's much harder to come from a really authentic place. And I think that's what I do strive for. Yeah, that's what I strive for, is to be able to come from an authentic place, because without these practices, the help of, I keep going back to the hawthorn here, without the help of these medicines, I think it's much harder for me to ground, and we have these allies, you can call them. My breath's an ally, the hawthorn is an ally, the cacao is an ally, and I can call upon these allies when I feel I need them. And I think, like, if I'm not coming, like, I'm becoming more and more aware of this, like I went through most of my life up until the last 4 years or whatever, not coming from an authentic place. And I think not coming from an authentic place, that deeper part of ourselves is it's jarring for that part of ourselves to not be, and whether we're conscious of it or not. And I think when I'm very ungrounded, I struggle with that. So to stay grounded, I can, in all situations, come from that authentic place. Not feeding into, because I've spent, like, the way society is, I think it's very hard to be fully authentic. It's not received very well a lot of the time. And it's having an assurance in yourself that you can be authentic, be real, and be honest, regardless of how it's received. Regardless of how. Huh?
What is the payoff then? As in, like, I totally get you here, and the setup, the system around doesn't directly reward authenticity. It rewards productivity first. And, like, you know, if you can squeeze out the extra couple of hours of this grunt work, of this hard work and all the rest, well, then we'll take that over your authentic self and we'll say thank you and we'll give you the extra bit of reward for it. The authentic self, like coming from that space, for me, offers me like more stamina. I can move from that place for longer. But more so for me, it's if I was to quote Kierkegaard, it's where I'm putting my existential bet. It's just I'm willing to die on that hill. And all the other hills, all the other things that we can get caught up in. If someone challenges me on that too hard, I'm not willing to die on that. And then I'm constantly shifting and changing. And then I feel very anxious and unstable in myself. But that's only relevant when you're trying to get off the bottom, when you're really trying to kind of like just not crack and not crumble. Once you get up to a certain level there where you're kind of flowing a bit more and things are starting to work, and there's these synchronicities and there's these things that just you weren't even trying but they pay off. Why is authenticity still so valuable there?
So I think when I'm authentic, it creates a certain peace within myself. When I'm unauthentic, whether it's at the front of my mind or not, it's causing some sort of chaos inside. It's causing some sort of chaos, and the authenticity I find brings peace. And to become, for me, what I view as, not that I'd be able to put it into words, but being fully authentic, that's a journey to get to that place. I feel that not everything, but so much of growing up and so much of what I listened to from my parents and from the education and all that stuff steered me further and further away from being authentic. So trying to come back to find something that I probably never had, to get back there is a hell of a journey. But like, even it could be one conversation with someone and you actually genuinely speak from the heart, not from what you think they want to hear, not from what you think you should say because that's what everybody says on Instagram, or not what, just none of this, to just genuinely speak your own thing. That feels amazing. And even doing that the odd time starts to bring peace in. It's not about getting to that place immediately, and when you're not in that place, everything feels all over the place. No, I think even a little bit of authenticity here and there can really boost some sort of self-confidence that's in there, and then slowly just becoming that more and more. For me, becoming that more and more. I was very afraid before of making people uneasy. Very afraid of making people uneasy. And that comes from when I was a child. I'm not going to get into why, just because I don't want to blame anyone for that, because anybody that put that on me, that was more than likely put on them. And that's just the way it is. But I can break it. I can break that chain, that cycle.
I was going to ask that. So like in this situation, as in like to trust authenticity is it goes counter to humility. So again, this comes to your like lower, middle, and upper world. So if you're being authentic, you are tapping into. So like maybe this doesn't work in the shamanic language. So this is why I was kind of asking for whether they map or not. But I feel like if I use it in the spirit within, that is the authentic spirit within coming out into this spirit between, this relational space. But it might not be humble to the spirit beyond, as in the situation that we're in. The spirit beyond, there could be, if we're in a business together or if we're in a community together, the spirit beyond us needs attention, as in we need to make sure that the community is still going okay. There's duties, there's responsibilities, there's commitments, there's all of these things. And then if you place that into nature and you say the spirit beyond isn't like, we're not attending to that spirit at all. And just so for that, it's difficult to be humbled into the situation, and we can get lost in this Icarus, in this flying too close to the sun. We are God and we are everything. And if you do not agree with me, well, then raise your vibration, get up to my level or whatever. And you get that whole space. And that's a trap when you get into this sort of language.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the fact, that's if you disconnect from the top. But even if you disconnect from the middle or the spirit between, it can disrupt that as well. There's a certain trust that's needed, that I trust you to follow my authentic self. And I'm trusting that my authentic self will naturally dance or will naturally flow with your authentic self. And that's a big ask. As in, like, if we need to get some stuff done, we don't necessarily have the time to get our authentic selves to play nicely or to dance or whatever else. And we just have to put on the uniform, put on the badge, put on whatever, and just being like, okay, you do this, I'll do this. And we'll stumble along. We'll figure it out, and we'll leave the authenticity second, maybe third.
Yeah, I suppose there's situations where maybe I want to say something, maybe I feel a little bit shit in myself because I'm not saying something that I feel I need, or I should say. I feel I'd like to say, but I suppose I do ask myself at times, if I have the time to think, if it's not a direct, immediate conversation, is it necessary? Is it necessary to say this at this time to this person, to this group of people, whatever it might be? And then I also, something I've been working. Instead, I'm going to stop using the word working for anything. I'm going to start saying playing. So something that I've been playing with for the last 8 months, I'd say, is, and this is not an easy thing to do, but I've become kind of hyper aware of it because I had my focus on it. And that is where I'm coming from, what place within me I'm coming from when I'm in an interaction. So am I telling Nathan this because I want him to think something about me? I want him to think I'm this, I want him to think I'm that. Or am I genuinely sharing what I am, just what's true? What's true? Like, what kind of place is that coming from? Is it ego? Is it authenticity? And becoming hyper aware of that has been a journey, because there's many times where I say something and I'm like, whoa, that was ego. That was ego. And then and because I'm hyper aware of it, then I'm like, oh, like what? Like, it doesn't feel nice. But what does feel nice is when I actually change what I say and maybe say to that person, look, I'd like to take that back. As like, I didn't mean to say that, or that wasn't the right thing to say. And then flipping that, because when I think about it, I've always been aware of it. I think we all are. We just don't actually, it's like there, we just don't look. So many things are right there, and we know these things, but we just don't look. And that's fine. Maybe we look if we ever feel ready to look at these things. And I'm not always ready to look, but now most of the time I am, and I make mistakes all the time. But that's how I'm learning, and it feels good to, like, there's many things that I do now, and even now I'm wondering if I say this, is this ego? But there's many things that I do now where I don't bother to tell people, and that's been a practice I've been doing, where I might send somebody some good vibes, or like a good wish for someone. Sorry, yeah, I just have a good wish for someone, and not feel the need to tell somebody about it. And that's that I have found that so powerful. The not needing to share everything that I'm doing if I think I've done something really nice, or really, what's the word? Yeah, just not needing to tell people everything, because I have found that holding some of that just to yourself can be much more powerful with how I think it comes out then in different ways in your interactions, when you're not needing to tell everybody what you've done. And like, it's hard because obviously with social media and stuff, it's people feel like they need to share, or people, I don't even like categorizing this, but you see a lot of people share everything they do on Instagram. It could be something quite personal, and then it's put on Instagram so that there's validation received. And I get that, because I've done it many times. But to actually just try sometimes to not seek validation, it can be so empowering to not seek validation for things, even when they might be so beneficial for somebody else or for humanity or whatever it is. There's a serious power I find in holding on to these things for yourself, and that's something that I've been working with, and like I said, just noticing where I'm coming from in my interactions, in my actions as well. In my actions, I've tried to even, and this is something that's really helped me as well, is to gracefully move through the world. When I'm walking through the forest, to try my best not to break things, to trample. And I do at times, like I could be having a conversation and I step on a load of lovely little daisies or something, but it's the intention is to move with more grace. And again, like, yes, it's what that does. It's how that lands in the body and comes out in so many other ways. That moving with grace, the way you speak, then if I'm moving my physical body with grace, when I'm having a conversation, I'm softer, I'm more gentle. There's so many aspects to this. I hope I'm not going all over the place with it, but
no, can I ask, actually, just on this, can I ask, have people said this to you? Have people said, like, whatever you're doing lately, like, I feel like I felt different, or there's something, like, I knew you like 3 years ago and I'm like re-meeting you now and there's just like a different space? Or like, how have people around you reacted to this flow or this introspection, like you're saying, like at the moment that you're heavily aware of when ego comes in, or this moment of grace that you're on about here, where you're on about like moving in grace and how that affects your conversations? Has that been noted by like family, friends?
Yeah, massively. I suppose gentle would be the word. Gentle would be the word that I've heard quite a bit.
Beautiful.
Gentle, grounded, and this is not all the time, like by any means, but in general, gentleness, and even when I went on this, when I began reconnecting, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. When I began reconnecting, I suppose I went into that like a bit of a bull, like, but that's understandable because my whole life I was a bull with everything I did. It was more. It was head first into everything, and that's the way I jumped into all of this kind of stuff. And that's fine because I learned so many lessons from that. And there's a huge rush I feel with people wanting to heal themselves. This massive rush, and I notice it with the breath work. In them spaces at times, there's a lot more groundedness when we move much slower with these things. There's a lot more groundedness. When we rush, I don't think there's much time for integration. And I think integration of any lesson we get in life is what's massively important. And there's many lessons I've gotten that I didn't integrate. And there's many I did. But given space for integration, not everything needs to be a big, massive experience. It's subtleness. Subtleness is where I'm at the moment. And like I said, I wasn't always there. And I don't expect everyone that I speak to just be like, okay, you're saying subtleness is good, I'm going to be subtle. I don't expect that. I don't expect anyone to do anything I say. I think we all massively learn from each other. When I'm holding breathwork sessions, whatever it might be, I massively learn from the things I hear in them sharing circles. And I think if we can come from an authentic place and with good intention, then everything we say is valid. If it's with good intention and from an authentic place, whether it resonates or not. And that's how we learn from each other. I feel that's how we learn, when we just come from, and maybe someone will say something that we might be able to offer back to them. They might be able to offer us something if we're coming from that good intention, authentic place. I've said this to, I was having a conversation with Flavia, my partner, and we were talking about labels, like, because obviously the world is very divided by labels and stuff at the moment. And I'm in this box, I'm in this box. This is my opinion. I'm in this box, I'm in this box. And I feel it creates a lot of conflict. And I know this will, okay, I'm not just going to say this will never happen, but this is like a utopia that everybody was allowed to just have their own opinion, but come from an authentic place with it. And then I think, well, obviously there'd be so much less conflict. Not saying that'll ever happen, but
That's a big thing for me, man. I've spoken to you about this, but this whole like Neoplatonic language that I'm trying to use and incorporate is all about the fact that the authentic in to translate here, but like the kind of the really real is always behind the mystery. And then what I offer in this moment is always going to be a map that doesn't exactly map. It's always going to be a category. It's always going to be a rough estimate, because like, how can I put, like, I saw a tree the other day, like exactly how much detail do you want of this tree that I saw for you to get the most accurate picture? And do you need the most accurate picture? Like, no, you don't. And do you need the most accurate picture on like a physical level or an emotional level or a spiritual level or on like a color level, or like, as in like all of this stuff, as like, how could I ever capture that? So like, I think that what you're on about there is so true. I think it's simply, if like the utopia for me would be that if everyone understood that the map is not the territory, that what is being offered is an indication, is like a little like arrow pointing towards what's being referred to, but never captures what's being referred to.
Yeah. You're so right with that. And if anybody, I suppose, like all I would say from what I have learned, and this is my opinion at the moment, maybe something's going to happen in my life in the next few weeks and something changes, and that's fine. But at the moment, I find that when it comes to ritual ceremony, yes, try different things and see what resonates. See what brings you groundedness, what brings you to a place of peace. I heard someone say this a few weeks ago, Santiago. Somebody had asked him what was the best advice he'd ever gotten. And what he said was, search for peace, not happiness. So I think that really did strike me. Because what I've found now with certain practices is it's bringing me that peace. And from that place of peace, I can be authentic. I can be real. I can come from that place within myself when there's peace in here, when there's chaos, which comes in and can come in micro ways daily. And that's why I have the ritual. That's why I have the ceremony in the morning to bring back the peace. And then when I'm hit with everything that I might be hit with that day, it's not bouncing off chaos. It's bouncing off peace. And then whatever that might be, it doesn't go back out it doesn't bounce off my chaos and go back out as more chaos. It can just maybe hit my peace and dissolve. Like that's ideally the place I would like to be coming from each day. It doesn't always happen, but it happens more and more. The more I discover, I suppose, what way I like to sit in ceremony and ritual. And I think at the moment it's that intuitive, okay, I'm going to sit now with a cup of hawthorn tea and see what it is. Maybe I'll pick up the bodhrán or the drum. And these kind of things like the drum, the bodhrán, the breathwork, they're taking me away from everything that's going on in my mind. And I'm focusing just on this. For me, I find something repetitive, like a mantra, like the drum, like the breath. Something repetitive really helps to bring me to that zone, that place, that void even. And that's what creates this sort of peace within me. And that's ever, and that's what's sort of another thing that brings me peace, is to know that there's no end to discovering what works for me, what other things I can try within this, and there's no end to discovering more. And like you were saying, I think you said at the start something about this finding enlightenment and you're trying to get to that landing pad.
Cause me issues for sure.
Cause you issues, yeah. I'm really, because at times I can get quite busy with different things, with workshops and that kind of thing. I can get quite busy and it gets overwhelming at times, until I just bring it back to finding that peace today, to finding that groundedness today, and just doing what I need to do today. And it's just keep coming back to that each day. And to find what you're talking about, that landing pad, I think it would have to be like you spoke about this before. I think for me to reach some point like that, I think I would have to be totally away from this modern world, and maybe in a community, in a location. And like, I don't even know if I want that right now. Do you know, I don't even know if I want that right now, but I could really notice last year when I came back from a trip away, I was away from this society for a number of weeks, for quite a while, nearly 6 weeks, I think, and I massively felt. How do I put this in a language that? Well, I'll just put it in my language and then see if I can change it. But just the energy of this society. It hit me like a slap in the face. And for weeks, I was sitting in ritual and ceremony for about 3 hours every morning in front of my altar. And I had peace there. And then I would walk outside the door and it was like, just, and in many forms, in the words people were saying, in the conversations I was hearing, like all these things were hitting me. And they continue to do so because I'm still living in this. But see, that's the thing. My physical body is here. But I am learning more and more that when I center myself, I can be in that, what I may call chaos. I can be in that, but I can be in that with more peace. And I have found that being authentic, being real, being softer, being more gentle, that allows me to be in this without so much chaos. And it's that's the journey I'm on, I suppose, is finding that centeredness more and more, and figuring out the ways to do that, and reconnecting with this island is massively helping. I think what has really helped is connecting with something greater than myself, that spirit beyond, connecting with something that's more than just my own inner work, more than my own traumas. Like, yes, going in and delving into that is fantastic, but that's a hole as well when you get stuck doing that. And I have got stuck doing it. But I spend so much time now in wooded areas. For me, it's a forest area is boom, boom, bang, grounded, centered. And obviously I'm not going to live in it. Well, I'm not living in a forest at the moment anyway. But I can carve out time. I can carve out time to go to these places and to sit with a tree. And like I say that to people and they're like, how can you get a message from a tree? How can you feel something from a tree? And I have got so many messages in that, but it's not the tree. I remember saying to the students, were you there last week, one of the workshops, and I said that if you are going to take a leaf or something from a live tree, ask permission. And they're like, well, what are they going to say? Yeah, all right, no worries, man, or whatever. It's like, no, but it's just a living being, like we are. And it's just about kind of respect. And like I said, it's the same with
for kids, especially. I said that's definitely a humble practice there, especially for kids of that age, around 16, where the culture at the moment is all like, how can I entertain myself at every given gap? I have a few seconds here. I'm going to check my phone. What can I take? What can I consume? Like all the rest. And then having a moment like, okay, he's after asking me to get a leaf. I go get a leaf. Next, what is all this about me? All this thing, whatever. And just asking them for a moment, just being like, okay, turn that arrow of attention out the way and ask the tree. And I think anyone, no matter where you are coming from, can see the gravity as your gravity switches to something else and you treat it with respect, and you're just like, is it okay if I take this? And you just get silence, like, okay, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to walk off. You can as in iterate that, do 10 different versions of that, and you will understand. Anyone coming from anywhere will understand what that is and how powerful it is. So that's not, I know you're saying some people struggle to understand it, but it is so powerful.
Yeah. And what I feel that will do is by showing respect to a tree, you will probably respect people and yourself a little bit more, because you're giving respect to something outside of yourself. And I'll give you an example of a message I got from a tree and how the ripple effect of that can be so powerful. Sitting under a horse chestnut tree down in this forest that I would spend a lot of time in this particular place. It's quite like the palm of a hand. You've been there with me before. And sitting in that tree, and I realized how the roots were all under me. And I really felt like the tree was holding me. And when I felt that, I let go of, I was lying down and I still allowed so much of my body to sink a little bit deeper because I was holding tension. And I realized how difficult it can be for me to just be held and just to totally let go into it. Yes, someone can hold me, but am I fully allowing myself to be held? Is my intention here to be held, or am I being held but also holding on to something? And if I'm feeling that, I'm sure many other people do. And it kind of came true in a way that I felt maybe as younger kids now, like you see with the tribes, the babies would never be put down, they're constantly held. And I think as a baby, that's what we crave. But nowadays, and I seen it recently where I heard a person, I won't say anything else, but I heard a person say, we need to teach him that he can't always, and this was like a 6-month-old baby, we need to teach him that he can't always just be picked up. And I remember thinking, whoa, right? Now that's not to judge whatsoever. That's just like, this is it here. We crave to be held. And I think, my personal opinion, and then in that, a lot of this came through sitting at the tree, the being held. And like I said, okay, next time an opportunity arises that I think somebody might benefit from just being held, that I'll offer that and see what happens. Yeah, it might be shunned away. Because I also felt that in being held, like it's great to talk to people about our issues and our things that are bothering us and things that aren't. It's great to talk about that. But I did feel that if we fully allowed ourselves to be held, that alone, without words, would bring stuff to the surface. And the next day I was in the forest with a friend, another bloke, and he was going through some stuff. And I was like, oh. So this opportunity is presenting itself straight away. And it was at the same tree. And I offered that to him. I said, do you want to lie back? And I held him. And I just held him. There was no words. There was no anything. And that brought stuff up. And then that led into a conversation with somebody for him. And it all came from the message from that tree. Like, I know all the other steps happened in between, but it was simple as that. Like it was me acting upon something I felt, and I wouldn't have felt that had I not been lying in that tree. Maybe at some other point in my life I would have, but that's kind of how I believe it works. And whether or not I would have got that realization somewhere else, I believe it came from that tree. And once I believe it, if it's benefiting, why is there any other need for any more of an explanation to it? I feel, once we're believing if we're believing something and it's benefiting us, or it's benefiting humanity, or it's benefiting the land, or whatever it might be, isn't that enough?
I think when you approach it with the humility that you're approaching it with, as in, like, if you're full on, the tree is telling me this, and then I must and I should, and you're using those words, that's when I feel like it gets into trouble. And I know you're taking them out of your vocabulary very deliberately, so that you're not navigating that whatever messages, so that you're very much receptive to messages, but then responses and all of this stuff, that you're very receptive to that, which is the other thing I want to bring your attention to, or the listeners' attention to here. So this is like some form of ritual where you're bringing from the spirit within, and you're also tapping into a humbling spirit beyond, and you're allowing it to permeate through the spirit between into this like horizontal and all the rest. And even when you were saying earlier that you know when it came from ego and you just called it out. And again, you're bringing this awareness of, like, you know, that was ego coming up, and then a spirit beyond said, hey, that's ego. Like that humbling spirit said, hey, that's ego. And you played it out on the horizontal. You played it out in the middle world. You allowed it to be played out in the middle world, which I think is massively strong. And seeing as we're on about ritual and all the rest, and just before I jump into the kind of questions to finish off, Vervaeke once said that how you know a ritual is working, is connecting, is true to you and for your heritage and your story and your perspective, where you're coming from, is if it is both grabbing you deeply, so it's really connecting to something deep, and it's also permeating or kind of seeping out into other aspects of life. So in that situation, it was a very spiritual, very kind of isolated, not isolated is the wrong word, but it was a moment on your own. And then it spread out into your like social situation. Or more, like a better example of this might be, or one that's easier to grasp, is when you're saying that you're trying to be graceful moving through the forest, and you're giving that level of attention to your movements in the world. And then you're bringing that into a conversation and saying, like, you know, how can I give that level of attention to how I'm speaking and also how I'm responding to this other person. And that's, I just, you've encapsulated it, you've embodied it through this whole interview. And I just wanted to kind of put a thumb on there and just being like, for anyone that's wondering, or I don't know, I just, as you said, trying to label something corrodes it, gets rid of it, kind of just, it's not good. But if you categorize it and use it as a sign and just understand, look through the telescope, not at the telescope, as I've said. But so don't, when I'm trying to say this, don't then try to like mechanically kind of put in the pieces, but just recognize that system. And then when you're in the system, retrospectively, like when you're looking back, and just being like, oh, and then it will start to come into the present moment. I think just for, I don't know, I think this is why I wanted to talk to you, because you're such a presence, as in like, it's not necessarily, this isn't a lecture. This isn't a, here's my theories and here's my stuff. This is just, here's how I flow. And it's very much trying to follow the line. Instead of looking at the line, you're really trying to, or like I'm listening, and when I am with you, it's really trying to follow that. And you get a real flow in the conversation, and it's and a real flow into how to move in life. And it's beautiful. So with all of that said, I suppose, yeah, that's just, this is a hard pivot now because it's, I'm trying to wrap it up here, I suppose.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is a little bit of a hard pivot. But you did mention earlier about, you talked about your breath work and that space as a partner, as an ally, as a friend. You personified it as something you could engage with that gave you good counsel. So on that level, treating anything like that, so I'm on about symbols, people, like religious or mythological figures or anything like that.
Inanimate objects. Anything,
yes. What or who would make your council of sages?
Oh. This here is one.
Palo Santo?
Piece of Palo Santo that I got in Peru. I will never burn, and hopefully never lose. Again, I thought I lost it a few times, and that actually sent me into a little thing of how I can still pull on the power of this and what this means to me without having the physical object in my hand. Just knowing that it's of what it meant to me and what it means to me. Sorry. Are you on about people now or just anything?
Okay, before I answer that, seeing as you're after giving a space, just to recognize the level of detachment that you had in giving that you valued the space of the object inside more than the object itself outside. Like that is Oh man, this conversation is there's so many of these things I'd love to dig into. But
Well, I'll give you an
just
example. I'll give you an example just of what this is. So for me, I connected very deeply with Palo Santo over a year ago. It really helped me through a very tough night one night, and that was with lighting the smoke. And when I would sing to plants, to trees, quite a lot. It's something that I started doing quite a while ago, and again, it was a gratitude that I actually can't even feel for myself. It's something, again, much beyond me. And now when this particular piece of Palo Santo, it just represents centeredness to me. So there's been a few times in breathwork when I've been looking for centeredness and I'd have my eyes closed and all I can see is this piece of Palo Santo floating in blackness. And that just represents centeredness. And I can see that anytime I want, whether I have the physical object or not. It's in some way embedded in me. And I think, yeah, that's the detachment of having the physical object. Although, like, I have another thing here that represents something very, very, very deep to me. It's a piece of deer antler that I found in a mountain in Barcelona. And again, the situation, the representation of what this symbolizes to me is so powerful. And it's so nice to have the physical object. But again, not for me, it's not like I'm trying to not have physical objects or needing to have the physical object, all as absolutely amazing as it is most of the time.
So treating it like a key almost, as in like it. So again, look through.
That's why I have them. That's why I have them sitting here with me. I'll show you what I have with me right now.
Yeah.
I have this deer antler, Palo Santo. I have a blue stone, which I cannot remember the name of. The reason I got this was during different meditations, when I felt pure peace and calm, all I would see is this color. So I got this stone. So this is clarity. And that's why I wanted clarity for here. So I just have that close to me. And it's just a reminder. I have, which is pretty amazing, I have a lion dew claw, an actual dew claw from an actual African lion, which was gifted to me. And again, that just, the lion, I suppose, is, for me, is nearly just stoicness and very sure, just sureness. Is that a word? Sureness.
Yep.
Just knows. Yeah, that's what it is. I see the lion as he or she knows the strength they have within and doesn't need to display that only in moments when it's totally necessary. You know, you look at a lion and you're like, yeah, you can just lie there sleeping all day, but I know the strength you have, like, you know, the power. It doesn't need to be constantly flexing that, I suppose. And yeah, just having these objects, you know, these power objects, maybe, if you want to call them that. Here I have my intention for the month, which is live from service. And what I mean by that is live, first of all, to myself. So today, I could have stayed in I canceled a couple of things I had this week because of the anxiety it was causing today. And that was me living from service to myself. Do you know? Whereas I could have said, no, I won't cancel the breathwork session because all the other people would be disappointed. But what's better for me to postpone that and come into that centered with the intention, with a good intention, or for me to go in there tired from the weekend. You know, I was on a training all weekend and it hit me today, and that's what caused all of this. But then living from service in myself, I postponed some stuff, and these things like that, I seen that this morning sitting in front of my altar. So kind of that lodged that idea in my brain. Then, are you going to do what's good for you, or are you going to do what you think you should do?
So the power isn't in the piece of paper, but it also is in the piece of paper.
Yeah, it is, and it isn't.
It's a paradox.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I swear, if I could bottle that realization and if I could give it to myself and just say screw to everyone else, I'd be so happy because I always forget this.
Mm.
Always, I like always mistake the object for the relationship, or I lose the relationship because the object's just the object, and like, you know, I have a better relationship with it when I connect directly to this thing. It's just like, yeah, but sometimes by placing it, you're simplifying it so that the simple me can understand it, and you're also giving it the gravity where you understand it doesn't capture it entirely. And it's just every time I come back to that spot, it's beautiful, but reminding myself to come back there is difficult. Which brings me on to the next question. Is just in this work. So I actually find that a very playful process of catching myself and scolding myself and just being like, you did it again. And
yeah. That's it. Playful though, keeping that spirit with it. And eventually these things will land more and more. Like I forget so often with these different things. And then I get a reminder walking out of a doorway the other day, and I just got hit on the head by something, looked up, and it was a hawthorn branch. And straight away, because of what that represents to me, just pure calmness, pure peace. And it's like, the branch is the branch, but you know, it's my relationship with that doesn't really exist in a physical form or something. Yeah, hard to explain, but yeah.
No, but like shift it the opposite way and play it out. As in, like, if you don't have that relationship and you're just trying to get through your day and the head's down and all the rest, and you get hit with a branch, and you like what response comes up there? It's like, did it do damage? Did it affect your day? No. And yet it's like naturally we'd just be like, the bloody tree, I'm going to chop that tree down, or whatever else. It's like, I'm going to get my back on that tree because it hit me. And the alternative is like, there's no damage. I take it as a sign. And like, what if I treat it as such, what could I learn? Because I'm not going to cut down the tree. Why would I? That'd be ridiculous. I'm not going to get annoyed about it. It didn't hurt me or anything like that. So just, okay, here's a moment where I was off in my thoughts and it's after knocking me back into presence. Maybe that was the point.
Every time, and every time I get hit in the head, I have had so many experiences now where I've been totally unpresent and I banged my head. And the first time it happened to me was in a Carnon Lock crew, and I went to bend down and I got smacked in the head by a rock because I wasn't watching what I was doing. And ever since that moment, because the first thing that popped into my brain was the scene in The Lion King, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Rafiki, wrong again.
When Rafiki hit Simba on the head. And for some reason, that was the first thing before, like, along with the pain, along with everything else, I just felt like Rafiki smacked me on the head. And ever since then now, the majority of the time when I get hit by something on the head, there's a little giggle that comes with it, because it's a message to slow down. Rafiki's hitting me on the head. And that's a playful way to see things, I suppose. And that's why I'm trying to turn. I'm actually another thing. I don't want to call what I'm doing anymore breath work. And I know that might be extreme or whatever, but this came to me the other day. So I've been saying at the moment, breath session, because the word work has a hell of a lot of baggage. And that's not a reason why I shouldn't use it necessarily. But it's a word that I'm, trying to take away. Like, instead of saying I'm working with the hawthorn, like I would have said, I'm playing with it, or I'm sitting with it, or whatever it might be. I'm enjoying
your use of that word, like.
Yeah. And look, me wanting to take that word work away is a totally personal thing. Just because I view it in that way doesn't mean that anyone else will.
No, but even, okay, take it as this. So like we do this in our workshops, and we like talk to the kids, but like anyone will connect with this. It's like when you take away a sense, when you blindfold yourself, all of your other senses become heightened. So just treat that this exact same way with your language. You take a word away, what word replaces it? Is it better or worse? and like exactly what's my relationship to that space.
Yeah. So
So with that said, anyway, to come back to the question, we're on about play here. No, it's perfectly fine. This is bloody great. And I'd make time in the day for Rafiki like any day.
Yeah.
But with all of this work, okay, so you're on about minding your language, kind of, but not in a. Okay, I'm going to tend towards that side because I'm going to try and make it seem more restrictive. And you're on about being very aware when you're being graceful, and you're on about being
and when I'm not,
having rituals or stuff like that. There's all of this work that goes into getting into the right mode and the right stuff. Okay, I know you're playing along the way, but for someone that's listening and that's just looking from this in the outside and is just like, I want to say what I want to say, I want to have the day I want to have, and I want to like not think about all of this other stuff. For them, where are you currently trying to reintroduce play? Because this work does get a bit kind of difficult. You really do have to go into the inner spirit. You have to go into those like the memories and the building blocks and all of these things. You have to go down deep to figure out where it came from or whatever else. And as you said earlier, as you play with it, they kind of go a little bit lower each time. They kind of like sink in that little bit deeper. So just at the moment, if I was to ask you where you locate play most at the moment, where do you feel it most?
Locate play. I think because that is something that I'm really trying to bring in is play, and something that I'm definitely inviting in more and more. Trying not to be so serious with things, and I think that's what it is. It's in my way of viewing what I'm doing. It's in my way of viewing it, because I could go into a workshop thinking of it as work, and I need to do this, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do this. Or I can go in and say, okay, I have this rough outline, and I'm going to just kind of play with it and enjoy. It's just literally flipping the intention, the way of, I'm just going to use the word working, the way of doing things, just the way of doing things. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy. And what does happen to me numerous times these days is, if I am getting quite serious with something, I get to a point then where something just flips. And I don't know if it's because I've had the intention of play for a while. It doesn't always come out by any means, because it's not something I always did. So it takes a while to come in. But it does come in, and sometimes starts with little small moments. But I'll get to a point where the seriousness just in a split second vanishes, because I keep coming to a realization that what is the point of seriousness? And I have to keep reminding myself of this, but what is the point at times? I know there's moments where maybe it's needed, but from getting so serious, it keeps bringing me to a place of a lot of peace and calm, because I keep realizing how unnecessary so much of the things I would have gotten all serious about is. How unnecessary it is. Like, is this life-threatening? Is this actually harming me? Is it harming anyone else? Is it necessary? Is it necessary? And I suppose that's maybe how it's coming in for me at the moment. Dancing is something I'm really, someone who has been, I kind of do have to, what's the word? Give credit or acknowledgement to Flavia, because she embodies childlike play. And it's very difficult to be, that can be triggering. Do you know what I mean? Because, maybe a little bit of like, oh, fuck, I wish I had a bit more of that. Or else sometimes it'd be like, I want, because of the way I have been a lot of the time, it's like I want to be a bit more serious here, so and in different times different things come in, but just watching her, watching how she moves through the world, how she interacts, has helped me massively. And the people we surround ourselves with, like my conversations with you, I always leave with things to integrate nearly, so it's like all the work we can do on ourselves. What we surround ourselves with, the environments we're in, the people we're around, will influence us massively, whether we wanted to or not, unless we totally shut ourselves off. And you don't want that either. Well, I don't anyway. But yeah, in the last while, I've been really, some of the company of different people I've been in, was at Mana Festival there recently, and some of the people at that really, I don't know, it's very magical or something. And and again, these people, again, it's coming back to the authenticity, and a word I haven't used much here, but it's honesty. That's another thing, is honesty, authenticity and honesty. Watching people be their authentic and their honest selves, you learn so much. You learn, because it reflects back at you, maybe what you're not being honest about and where you're not being authentic. Like that whole thing that we mirror each other. Sometimes I find that hard to grasp. I'm like, no, that person just really pisses me off. It's not mirroring something within me. But if you really look, a lot of the time you can see what it is. Or I find sometimes I think we can only see things in people that we have seen in ourselves. I'm starting to realize that. It's like I might see something I really don't resonate with in someone. It's like, oh, it's because that either comes in for me at times, or I was there at one point, or whatever it is. I think it's very hard to see things that we haven't experienced. We might see them, but we don't see them. That's what I think. Everything I say, another thing I'm conscious of is just everything I say is my opinion, my experience. And yeah, if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm really, again, Flavia's helping me with this, and that's just not falling into judgment. Not falling into judgment, which is what was that face there? It's
Okay,
hard not to, but
no, it's not that it's hard not to.
It's a lot more peace. There's a lot more peace within myself when I accept things rather than allow them to stir something in me.
What if I'm not looking for peace? What if I'm looking for legacy? What if I have something so important that I'm kind of willing to irritate your newsfeed by putting up these videos every week and just being like, oh, here he goes again, this absolute plonker putting up the videos? Or what if, every time I'm talking to someone and I'm kind of like, yeah, but do you understand the other perspective? Can you shift perspectives? Don't isolate yourself. Don't get stuck in it. And it's just like, man, that's an annoying lesson. Or hey, you're aiming for perfection, and it's like, yeah, but make sure you're feeling along the way, or you're stuck in feelings. It's like, yeah, but have an aspiration as well at the same time, and just make sure you're flowing between those two. And I'm nowhere near embodying that, but as in to have the conversation so that we can honestly be there and just say okay, hey, can we move this conversation into a space of legacy, of something that came before us? There was a pattern of life, of living before us, and there's going to be a pattern of living after us. And can we contribute to that? And sometimes there's a certain amount of judgment required, or there's a certain, it's a very difficult balance. Maybe. It's a really difficult balance.
And you know what? Thank you for that, because I know I'm saying the whole thing with no judgment, but I do fall into, maybe I could call it analysis or judgment. Fuck it. If that's the word, it's the word. And I think it's very necessary at times. And I think I was just in a little floaty, I'm not going to judge anything there for a moment when I said that. But because we're having this interaction, the spirit between, and then you say what you said, and then I'm like, that's waking something up in me. It's like, okay, yes, you are right. And I think, yeah, that's like, if I was to constantly stay in my own mind and have these things, there's so much to be learned from expressing. And it's just purely because we're having this honest conversation, and yes, I do think there is room for that, actually, now that I say it.
But also, I needed to hear you as well, because like in the last few days, maybe I'm being a bit of a tyrant, and maybe I'm just being an absolute. We'll stick with the word tyrant. I think that's bad enough, isn't it? But okay. So
yeah.
okay, I'll just say anyway. So last question for today is just we've. I definitely want to have you on again. As in 100%. There's so much more between the balance of the masculine and feminine, like how to structure a space and still hold the flow. Like you've referenced to that a few times. That's something I'd really love to dig into with you and get your perspective on it, because I think I could learn a lot there. But so just to end off, for people who are, as in for everyone, what would be your advice to them? So I'm on about like from the people who are just, I don't know how these people are still listening to us, but are just like, what are you on about? I want to do whatever I want. And like, I want to have, I want to enjoy. I want to be entertained. I need. All the way to people who are kind of, I want to learn, but I still want kind of the comfort and I still want a good life and all the rest, to then the people on the very opposite side who are just like, I'm going to achieve enlightenment and I'm going to quash down every bit of desire and I'm going to be the most pious and reserved and disciplined person ever. And that's how I'm going to achieve it. So for all of them, to help them listen to what you're listening to and to flow and to have the fire and the desires and the passions, but also have the humility and have the authenticity and the humility and the flow and the connection with something bigger and the connection with self. I'm like, that's a big ask. Religion's been trying to do this for years, for eons now, but just to the crowd, to the masses. What would you like to kind of finish off with? What's the advice?
Well, I suppose if anybody is even thinking of that, there's something maybe they want to delve into, something they want to change about the way they're living, maybe. Maybe they want to learn more about themselves. But I would just think, like, why? Why is it that you want to do this? Or why is it that you want to explore something? Yeah, why? What's your reason why? And then I'm sure most people would know their reason if they sat with it for a little while. And then what is it that is grabbing your attention? Like what I've spoken about, is it breath work? Is that something that's sparking a curiosity? Is it spending time in the forest? Is it beginning to maybe use a medicine like hawthorn tea? What is it that's sparking your curiosity and trying, like, sparking your intuition, whatever that, and maybe just following that. But I would just definitely say, and this is from my own mistakes, to just move slow and gently. Because there is no rush to get anywhere. This is another, like you said, you have to constantly be reminded of something. So do I. And that's that we can move slow and gently, and that it's a lot less, there's a lot less room for hitting potholes, roadblocks, speed bumps, whatever it might be, when we're moving slower and moving more gently. We have the rest of our lives to delve into things. And I think what I noticed was, because I had spent so much of my life in whatever I was in, I don't know why I nodded off to the left there, but I spent so much time in that when I discovered what it was like to tap into myself and tap into some of these different things, that I thought maybe I was making up for lost time. I think maybe that could be something that we can fall into, but it's not lost time because it's just exactly how it happened. And everything led you to this point to maybe wanted to explore something. So if something calls to you, whether it's the breath work, maybe reaching out to someone who has maybe triggered something for you or inspired you in some way, and asking a question, whatever that might be, and just beginning to explore, but just to remember gentleness and slowness, and gentleness and slowness is something that I'm trying to bring in, and it's kind of my intention with a lot of stuff now, that I need to be reminded about regularly. And again, I listened to it today. I cancelled a couple of breathwork sessions, and then when I do them again, I'll be able to come from a more centered place. So yeah, listen to yourself. Listen to yourself.
I think that is a great note to end on. So, Daryl, thank you so much. If anyone, I'll leave links in the description below to find Daryl on his Instagram, or find him wherever else, for anyone that's interested in keeping in touch with what he's at, finding these breathwork sessions, or just watching the flow, which is really what I get from just following you. But maybe that's just because I get all these big conversations we get to talk the whole time as well. Because Daryl, you are a very true friend. I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely have to do it again.
Thanks, Nate. And good of my gut.